It's very quiet so far.
Should be starting before too awfully long. Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up. Good. I just hit up Tracy to see where she is. She should be in a second now.
Is that me? I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming through.
Okay. Is it 6:30? No, we got 4 minutes.
Yeah, 4 minutes. You can
I can make my hair look nice.
you can do a little dog and pony.
I can talk about the Hive Butler free shipping.
I let everybody know that we've got the Zoom call is getting recorded, but we're also streaming live to YouTube. That way,
Ah.
if they missed something or if they can't stay the whole meeting, they will be able to see it later.
That is awesome. I'm so thankful that we have you.
Are you able to see the agenda page?
I can. Yep, it's big.
Okay.
Awesome. I love it. Is there anything I'm promoting really? Oh, Dave Shenefield.
Are the talking heads on the page now?
What do you mean?
Can you see people's? Can you
Yeah.
see people? Okay.
Yeah, I see Ed and Michael and Lisa and me and Jeanette. And I would have gotten my own headphones, but they're upstairs. And I see Ross. Hey, Ross. Thanks for coming. Good. I'm glad to have you.
Happy to be here. I kind of thought it was in person. I was misled.
Well, I would have, that would have been my choice, but I think this is easier for Paul. Trying to do hybrid is really tough, but next month we'll be back to normal with Paul. Will we record it though and upload it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
It's always more fun in person, right? With all the visual aids.
I want to see what Dave's doing. He, I guess he's still going to do it. So he said he has a table and all this stuff. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, cool. I'm excited. That talk is always very useful and I never get to give it my full attention because I'm always running around in the background. So I'm happy to focus on it tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear it as well.
And then next month you heard we're having Dave Shenefield in person. Oh no, May. Sorry, not April, May.
Cool. What's this topic?
Dave Shenefield, really?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, exactly. Which is part of the beauty. It's the beauty of him though, right?
Yeah.
He can hit all the topics and be entertaining and just really glad to have him. And he said no Zoom. He's coming.
Oh, cool. How your bees looking? Hey, there's David.
Yeah, there's David. Hi.
Hey, Dave.
How are y'all?
Good. How are you?
Hanging in there.
I just heard the weather forecast. I'm not very excited about the next 2 days, but next week looks like we might have some decent weather.
Yeah, we're hoping. You know what? It's strange. It seems like the last 6 months or something like that, the weather forecast has been getting worse and worse. I mean, as far as them actually getting it right, you know what I mean?
Yep,
Yeah,
I do.
It's changing all the time. You know, you look at it 2 days ahead and it says one thing, and then the next day it's completely changed.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, it's the only profession that you can be right 10% of the time and people think you're great.
And keep
Yeah.
your job. Okay.
Yeah. I
So
haven't
we're
looked,
at
but the
6:30
next
if
couple
you wanted
days
to
are
start.
nasty.
Is this what we've got? 6 people?
No, I see 26 people online.
Oh.
It only shows you the top people that have talked recently.
Okay. Well,
need-
I will. I'll get us going here. I'm Tracy Peelmeyer. This is North Central Beekeepers Club. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully, this will be our last Zoom meeting. Next month will be an in-person meeting, and we will have Beekeeping 101 going on simultaneously. And our Beekeeping 101 over these months is a repetitive class. So if you've been to it already, you don't necessarily need to come again, but it's different teachers each time. So certainly new things can end up being presented. So we would welcome 101 people next month. I'm going to let somebody else tell me what the speaker is for April. Oh, it's Ed, right, from SEBA, the beekeeper for Chiang Kai-shek. Isn't that who's speaking in April?
Eddie Choi.
Yes, I believe he's our speaker for April. And then in May, in person, we will have Mr. Dave Shenefield, the owner of Clover Blossom Honey in Indiana. He is the largest commercial beekeeper in Indiana. And so Dave, we're fortunate to get him that time of year. He typically doesn't like to do speaking during spring because he's super busy, but he wanted to come, especially to North Central. And we'll be excited to have him. He covers any topic you want to cover in beekeeping. He is a 3rd generation beekeeper. So he can answer just about any question that you have. So that is what I would encourage you to sign up for. These meetings are all posted to our YouTube channel. Thankful to have Paul here running it all for us. Can you guys all see the agenda then? Everybody can see it, right? I don't need to go through that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we
All
can
right.
see it.
So I'm going to hand it off to Jeanette then and listen in myself.
Okay, I'm just going to do my regular couple of ads for programs that are through the Beekeepers of Indiana and on the Beekeepers of Indiana website. The first one is the Young Beekeepers Award. And if you know any young beekeeper who you think should have this award, have them go to the website and the application is there. If they have any trouble, they can put a message on or send an email to our email, and I'll be glad to contact them and help them get through it. The deadline on this is September 1st, which will give you plenty of time through the summer to figure out if you have a young person that you know, and that's from ages 12 to 22, and encourage them to apply for it. The awards are quite generous, include cash and hardware. Okay, the next program is the Jump Starter. We have a Jump Starter winner this year who is Jessica Benz, and her mentor is Kim Patterson. For this program, and this is designed for somebody who would like to get into beekeeping, but maybe the financial part of it is a bit much for them to put out all at one time. So they can apply through our club. Now, this has to be through our club because each club can only have one applicant on this.
Jeanette,
And-
sorry to interrupt, but I think Tracy had a question.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. My question about young beekeepers, because my daughter is going to apply, that September 1 deadline, is that just for the application or is that first essay due on September 1?
It's the application, which includes the essay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the application is kind of a free form thing where
Right.
the applicant answers assorted questions.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and
Thank
that
you.
whole thing is due September 1st.
All right.
Okay, Jump Starter. Again, this information on it is on the website, on the Beekeepers of Indiana website. And what this is it helps get somebody started. The state organization gives a complete hive and tools. Our club donates a personal protection gear, a suit, and also the bees and also the mentor. So if you know somebody who might be interested in this for next year, please let our club know. Any of the people in the core group would know how to get in touch with me to help you with this. Just let us know at a meeting or send an email or carrier pigeon or whatever it takes. Carrier bee, maybe. Okay, that's my advertisement for the two programs. Next.
Who's next? I lost my agenda page.
Sorry, I'm trying to pull it up.
That's okay. Is it David?
It can be.
David, are you ready? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, we've got Dave listed as next.
Dave, you're muted. There we go.
I'm not muted now, but I think I
Oh,
sent
good.
my slides to Paul or Ms. Murphy. Do y'all have them?
Yeah, I can play them for you if you want.
All right, that would be helpful. I
Yep.
think if everybody was to see them, it would be good.
Yep. Let me pull those up real quick.
And I'm going to get to a certain point and tell you to quit playing them, just so you know ahead of time.
Okay.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to give my public service announcement also. The Eastern Apiculture Society is going to be having a conference August 11th through the 14th. And it's going to be about a 2-hour drive, which is closer than it ever is. It's going to be a little bit south of Louisville, Kentucky. So I wanted to let y'all know it's usually an event that holds about 1,200 people, but because of the COVID restrictions, only 300 are going to be allowed to come this year. And it's only going to be open to EAS members at first. So my announcement is this: if you're interested in going to that conference, join EAS now. Don't wait till August and then join, because people that have been members are going to get preferential treatment as far as getting into that conference. You know, and again, it's going to cap out at 300, which is less than a fourth of what normally gets to attend. And the EAS is probably the biggest bee organization in the United States. And the speakers are generally excellent. I think Deborah Delaney and what's his name?
Randy Oliver?
No, Randy's not going to be there. Wrangle, what's his name? I don't know. But
I'll look it up right now.
yeah, you look it up. There should be some speakers listed on that. So anyhow, that's my public service announcement. If you want to find out more about it, go to the EAS website. And I did send Tracy a flyer for that. She can post that to your web page.
Hey, David, can I add one bit?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I just because I got an email from the EAS here recently, and they said that registration would probably be open in early May.
Yeah, first week of May or so is what they said. Mm-hmm. You're right. Left that part out. All right. Okay, so can everybody see my slides now? I'm guessing.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to point out that I'm doing a presentation named Encouraging Bees to Raise Quality Queens for the Hobby Beekeeper. This is not for somebody that wants to raise 50 queens. This is for somebody who wants to raise 5 or 6, you know, and this is, these methods can be done without purchasing any additional equipment, like grafting tools and plastic cups and all that stuff. You might need a few very minor things, but this is queens for the hobby beekeeper, not, you know, and there's 1,000 ways to raise queens, but I'm addressing a very specific concern, and I'm not talking about starter and finishers and all that. This is just straight out. I'm going to be as honest as I can when it comes to doing these things. And I'm going to ask you to go to the next slide, Paul. Okay, I'm going to answer in my presentation primarily these questions. Why should you raise queens? When should you raise queens? Where do I get the eggs to make queens from? What should I have to raise quality queens? And how should you raise queens? Okay, so let's go to the next slide and look at why should you raise queens? Paul, yeah. Here's a couple of good reasons. Number one, improve your bee stock. If you're a hobby beekeeper and say you've got like 5 hives or so, this is what you've got. And you tell me if I'm wrong, okay? You've got one hive that's gangbuster. You open it up and bees just pour out of it, and there's thousands and thousands of bees in there, and you just can't, you know, it's just your best hive ever, and that's the one you tell everybody about, right? Okay. That's one of your 5. Then you got 3 hives that are, you know, they're okay. They're so-so. They're okay. You get by with them. I mean, you don't brag about them, but you know, you've got 3 hives that are okay, you know, a normal, what you consider a normal hive, not great, not terrible, just kind of between. And then that last hive, that's the dink, you know, that's the one that's barely getting by, and you never tell anybody about that one. Okay. So anybody, am I right so far? Okay, so that's what you got. Why should you raise queens? Well, you want all your hives to be like that first one I talked about, that big gangbuster that goes around. So you want to use that, kind of hive to improve your bee stock. Next slide, please. You want to save money. That's another good reason to save queens. You know, I mean to raise queens. You every year, you know, you go spend. Nowadays, I looked the other day. I think a cheap queen's $40. You know what I saw on the web this year, and that don't include shipping. And by the time you buy half a dozen queens or 5 queens a year, you done spent some out of change. You know, you done spent some out of pocket change. And you know, how does that help your beekeeping? It makes you want to get out of it. So you want to save money. That's another good reason. How about a third reason? Here's the best reason for you right here, especially if you're a hobbyist and you just been keeping bees a year or two. You want to increase your understanding of bee biology. And there's no better way for you to do that than to try to raise queens and get an understanding of the reproduction of how bees reproduce as far as, you know, queens and stuff. And then a fourth reason is, okay, that was all the good reasons I had. Okay, back up one more. Okay, when should you raise queens? Not when you need one next week. Okay, it won't work. From start to finish, it's going to be at least 25 days or maybe even 30 days for you to get a queen. So if you've got a picture like you see, if you've got something like you see in this little picture here, where you've got multiple eggs in a cell and this eggs are on the side, you need to go ahead and buy one. You don't need to, you know, you're not going to fix it by waiting 30 more days. Okay, you need to go ahead and get on it. If you've got a queenless hive, you need to buy one. Don't wait. Okay, not to mention the fact that you'll mess it up. If you're under this kind of pressure, you'll mess it up. Okay, you'll be thinking about, I got to have a queen, I got to have a queen. You won't be thinking about how to do it right. You know. Okay, so when should you raise queens? When there will be mature drones. I've made this mistake before, and I've seen a lot of other people make this mistake. And I to take care of that, I made a timeline. So let's go to the next slide and look at the timeline. All right, I'm gonna have to move this stuff out of the way because I'm okay. Now, if you look to the far right-hand side, the top line is a drone development to sexual maturity, and the bottom line is queen development to sexual maturity. You see, what you want is a mature drone and a sexually mature drone and a sexually mature queen to occur at the same time. You can't. A mistake that you make is starting to try to make queens in before the drones are ready, and you get some nice queens and you got nothing. Okay, so you have to wait to a certain period. And if you look at the top line, a drone's an egg for 3 days and a larva for 6.5 days and a pupa and then a mature drone. So you've got to line this up. So you want to be having sealed drone cells for several days before you start trying to make a queen. Okay, if you're trying to do it either this method or you're trying to graft, this is my schedule for when I'm going to graft first. After I start seeing sealed drone cells for a few days, then I'll start grafting. But grafting is something that I'm not talking about tonight, but I wanted you to understand this timeline and have a little bit about the biology of what's going on. All right, so let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, when should you raise queens? How about when you see the bees forming queen cells? Okay, they'll tell you when a good time to raise queens is when they start making them themselves. Okay, you pull that frame out. Let's go to the next slide. You pull the frame out and you start seeing this kind of stuff. That's a good time to start raising queens right here. And there's a one-step method of raising queens that I'm going to show you. I'm not going to show you right now this second because I've got to rearrange everything. But I want you to remember this picture right here. When you start seeing these, you can take advantage of some of these by using the one-step method of raising queens. All right, let's go to the next slide. Now, where should I get the eggs from to make queens? Okay, there's several criteria you can use. You can think about that big gangbuster hive that you've got and say, I sure would like my other 3 hives to be like that one. Or you can think about it in different ways. You can think, well, I'd like to make a lot of honey, so you want to get your best honey producing hive. Or my bees are kind of mean, some of them. I want my hives all to be real calm, so you're looking for the hive with the best temperament. And then your hive that shows the best varroa resistance or treatment tolerance. Okay, sometimes you put a mite treatment in a hive and the hive dies or it goes queenless or something, and that occurs, and we can expect that as beekeepers. But if you get a hive that you can put a treatment in there and it barely phases them, or they go a long time keeping the mite levels low without you interfering, that would be a good one if you're thinking about going treatment free or trying to minimize your treatments. And then there's one more criteria that I use, and that is your hive that did not swarm. Part of the genetic tendencies of swarming is swarming. I mean, it passes on from hive to hive. And if you got a hive that didn't swarm and you don't want to go chasing swarms, that might be something you use as a criteria. All right. And there's probably 100 other things you can think of, but the thing is, you cannot get all those at once. You can't fix all those at once. Okay. Now, what do you have to raise some good queens? Well, maybe stuff you got already. A few extra nuke boxes, maybe a few extra frames. Cut comb foundation. Now, I'm going to tell you, people don't like for me to say this because they want to use wired foundation, or they want to use plastic foundation. That's okay for most purposes, but when you get to making queens using these particular methods, you're trying to form queen cells on comb that's drawn out and everything. So you got to be able to cut it. And if you're using foundation with wires in it, right where they're going to lay that egg that you're going to use as a queen, right on top of that wire, so you can't cut it out. Or if plastic, you won't never get it out. So you have to have, maybe 1 box or 10 sheets or something of cut comb foundation, or you can always borrow some from Ross. He's really good about, I'm just joking about Ross. I like Ross. He's a good guy. You have to have an ability to make a split. Okay. And again, that goes back to learning about the bee biology. What do they need? You can't just take a frame out and put it somewhere, and you have to make sure they got food. You have to make sure they got honey. You got to make sure they got room. You have to have that ability to make a split. And it's not hard to learn that, but it's if you go into this not knowing, it's a lot more challenging. You have to have a willingness to experiment. Doing some of this stuff is a lot harder than calling up Oliver Rez or Baston's and saying, send me a queen, So you have to be, it takes a little more effort, but you have to be willing. But again, it's going to pay off if you try it. I mean, if you start trying to do this, it's going to pay off, even if you fail. And that's another thing. You have to understand that failure is an education, okay? I didn't do this right, because making queens is not like a lot of other things. You can make some mistakes in other things. Timing has to be right. The nutrition has to be right. any of this stuff, if you mess it up, you learn something. Oh, I didn't do the timing right. Okay. Or I didn't move the cell fast enough and she hatched out where I didn't want her. So you have to understand it. Failure is an education. And quite honestly, most people have to try these techniques 2 or 3 times before they get them. It's really hard to get this on the first try, but you learn each time you do it, and sooner or later you'll get it and you'll say, I did everything right. That's how I'm going to do it from now on. Okay. All right. Next slide. Anybody asleep yet? Am I boring y'all to death? Okay. How should you raise queens? How should you? Well, the way you most enjoy and are most comfortable with. Otherwise, you won't do it. If you try to do something and you think it's hard or too challenging, you won't do it. So when you get to raise queens, you can try 2 or 3 different methods and pick out the one you enjoy. It's like, people asking you, where should I put my bees? Well, before I even think about that, I want my bees I want to put bees where I can easily accessible, where I can get to them without any trouble, and a lot of people, they tell me, I got some land out here. I'm going to put them out in the middle of the woods so they won't bother nobody. Look, don't do that. Otherwise, you won't take care of them. It's the same thing with raising queens. You've got to enjoy doing it and you've got to get comfortable with it. Otherwise, you won't do it. You won't do it. And of course, the way you produce the number of queens that you want. If you have more success, you won't say you want 5 queens and you got having success, but you're only getting 2 queens. You need to think about, well, I need to try something different. Okay. You got to be able to produce what you need. All right. Now, these conditions must exist for the bees to raise quality queens. That's an important word, quality queens in cell builders. Number 1, the colony must be queenless. Okay. If they're not going to raise a queen if they think they've got one. Okay. They have to be queenless. The colony needs to be well populated. If you're putting 10 queen cells in a colony for them to raise, you got to have a lot of bees. Okay. I've seen people take, 100 bees and put in and think they're going to get a quality queen cell. You won't. There's not enough bees. You've got to have a substantial number of bees in a colony, particularly if you're using it as a starter and a finisher. Okay, and the colony must be well provisioned, not just with nectar, not just with honey, but you got to have pollen too. That's the protein source for them to raise the bees and to make the royal jelly. It's got to be well provisioned. And let me tell you, one of the biggest things you can do to raise queens is give them not only, feed them while you're trying to raise queens, put a pollen pad in. When I'm raising queens, I've got a sugar syrup feeder in there, and I've also got a pollen patty in there. I don't care how much stuff they've got, I add that just because. Okay. Now, I used this before, and I made this mathematical formula down here just for Jim, because I know he likes math. So QQ stands for quality queen. Quality queen minus A, you don't get what you want. Minus B, you don't get what you want. Minus C, you don't get what you want. All 3 of these must exist for you to get a quality queen. All right, let's go to the next one. All right. Here's a big mistake that's made. The younger the larva is, the better the queen is. It's no getting around it. 1 day old larva is the best. The development of queens is based on the amount of nutrition they get for the first 3 days after they hatch. Day 4, day 5, and day 6. You see, this is a chart here. Day 1 to 3, they're eggs. Day 4, day 5, day 6. By the time you get to day 6, at the end of day 6, it's determined whether it's going to be a queen or not. Whether it's going to be a quality queen, the younger the larva is, the better the queen is. Well, if you see slot number 4, that's the best time. Right when that straight line egg begins to curl, that's the best time. If you use one like number 5, you might get a queen, but it's not going to be 100% of what you want because they missed that day's nutrition. That larva at day 4, as a worker, is getting fed about 200 times. If it's being developed into a queen, it's going to be fed about 1,500 times. So once the bees decide that's a larva, that's the larva they're going to choose to raise the queens from, they start feeding it. Okay, and if you wait till day 5, that's that one day they miss. So it's not going to be as good as it would if you'd have started it on day 4. By the time it gets to day 6, well, you might get something that looks like a queen, but probably a drone layer, or just it just won't be what you want. I guarantee it. Okay, you'll be, where did I go wrong? Well, you used too big of a larva. All right, I harped on that enough. All right. I said this already. Whatever method you choose, A, B, and C must exist. All right, the following methods utilize a frame with foundation for cut comb, not plastic or wired. Let's see what's next. Okay. All right, this is where I'm going to have you turn this off, and I'm going to demo this instead of reading these. Okay. So I'm gonna have to relocate. Or how do I get to be? Wait a minute here. Can y'all see me so far? I need to be able to see me. There I am.
Yeah, you should have rights to be presenter. If you go to the bottom of the thing, you can hit. Oh, there you can.
Yeah. I might have to get my. Let me see here. Paul Phillips. Let me see.
We can see you.
Yeah, we see you. It's good.
All right, you can see me as a full screen.
Yep.
Yep.
I don't know if I can see you. All right. Okay, I'm guessing you can see the tops of these boxes right here, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, you remember I said something about one-step method when you spot queen cells? Everybody remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I have in this box, this is a queen castle, and it's a full-size deep box, and it's divided into 4 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each section will hold 2 frames. Okay. So here's your one-step method. Okay. You're looking through your hive here, and you're going, oh, okay, I checked this. Oops. Oh, look what I found. Can y'all see this? Look what I found in this hive. Queen cell. I take a quick look at it, make sure the queen's not on it. I put it into the queen castle. Then I go to another hive, another frame, and I find, I'm looking for one that's got some honey on it, got some honey on it, got some brood on it, got a little bit of pollen around it. I'm also going to put that in there. I'm done with that. In 2 weeks, I can come back and there'll be a queen in there. Okay. This box has an opening on all 4 sides, each for a different section. So she'll come and go and she'll make a queen. You made a queen in 1 step. Okay. That was pretty easy. Okay. That's the 1-step method. Now, the next method, the methods that I'm going to use that don't require, that will require you actually manipulating stuff. The next one's the Hopkins method. Okay. Don't pay any attention to the zigzags. Okay. This is a piece of cut comb foundation here. You pretend like that's all the way across. Okay. And you take that and you place it right in the middle of the brood area of the hive. Oh, this is a modified hive too. I meant to point that out before I started. You can see the ends. You'll notice the shoulder edges has been cut off. The shoulders have been cut off of this. If you compare it to another hive, the shoulders have been cut off. And what I've done, I've stuck nails in it so that I can push these in and pull them out and push them in and pull them out. You hang this in the middle of the brood nest by the nails. Put the hive back together. In about 3 or 4 days, you come back and you check. You put it in the middle of the brood area because the bees, one thing they won't tolerate is a blank space like that in the middle of the brood area. So they'll, if they've got stuff coming in, they'll draw that out really, pretty fast. You come back 3 or 4 days and check and see if you see any eggs. If you don't, close it right back up, put it right back in there. Check again. Sooner or later, you will see eggs. Okay, they've laid it out. Then you're going to take that, and you got to do some pretending here. Can you still see what I'm working on? You see what I'm working on? You have to pretend like this is the frame that I just had. This is a drawn comb. I couldn't get my bees to draw out any this time of the year. They were mad that I asked them to. So this is drawn comb. You had to pretend like that's what I just pulled out and they laid eggs in. Now, if you go look this up online and stuff, they'll tell you to crush these cells and do all this. And I learned a trick from Mel Dessicon. I have to give him credit for it because he said if I'd used it and I didn't give him credit for it, that he would sue me. So I have to give the Mel credit for it. So you have to remember that Mel said this, I didn't. That keeps me out of trouble. But here's the deal. I've got all these cells here and it's got, I don't really cut this out of the frame, you understand? I leave this in the frame. But these is 25 caliber bullets. And I take that and I press them down a little bit into cells where I want queens, where egg cells that I want there to be queens. And you notice I'm spacing them out. You've got to have the ability to cut them out. If you put them too close together and you get a cluster of queen cells that's all stuck together, and you go to cutting them out, you kill the queens. So they won't do any good. So you got them spaced out like so.
Are you going to bring these bullets to club next month and pass them out?
You want me to? I can pass them out one at a time real quick. No, I'm not doing. You see what I've got, right?
Okay, Dave, you have put those bullets in the cell
Yes.
where there's an egg
Right.
or larva that you want
Right.
to become a queen, right?
Right.
And to be clear, it's just the shell. It's an already fired bullet.
No, it's not. It's got a rounded. It's not an already fired bullet.
Oh, okay.
It's got a rounded tip to it. And one thing that I want you to look at, and I'm gonna pull this out, and I'm gonna point to this cell. I want you to see what happened to this cell. Okay. Well, I dropped my pencil. I was gonna point to it with. Is this cell right there? It's right below this bullet, about in the same place. You see it's a little bit bigger?
So you're basically stretching a cell out.
Yes, because this is more the size of a queen cell, okay? The bees will see this and say, aha, cell's ready. But a lot of the literature will tell you to scrape all these out and cut this cell and do this and do that, and it's a lot of trouble. I find this to be relatively easy. Okay. Now, after I protect all them cells, and of course, don't push that all the way to the bottom. You might destroy just push it in a little bit. You don't want to destroy the egg or the larva. Now, what we're going to do here to keep from all these cells, the bees trying to make queens out of all these cells, we're going to kill every other larva, or we're going to stop any egg from developing. This is flour, just wheat flour like you find in the grocery store, like you make bread. I know y'all make bread and cakes and stuff. I'm just sifting this on top. Now it goes in all the cells with the exception of where the bullets are, because the bullets are protecting those cells. And again, I learned this from Mel Dessicon. That flour will kill all those larvae that I just got flour in.
So Dave, those bullets are only going down just a little bit so that there's still a gap at the bottom so that you don't smush the egg, right?
Right.
Just press it in a little bit. You'll know. If you push it in too far, you'll know. Okay.
Why do we want to kill all the other ones?
Again, if the bees start developing those into cells, queen cells, also, you're going to have 2 queen cells right there stuck together.
Oh, we just don't want them to make more queens.
Make it easier for you to cut out the ones you want.
I get it.
Cut out what you want. Okay, you see, you saw how that happened, right? Now, back to pretending. Now I'm going back to my cell builder. This is not necessarily the same hive that I got the eggs from. Remember, I got the eggs from that killer giant hive over there because I want all my bees to be like that one. But I don't want to tie that hive up. I want that hive to keep making money. So I've got this hive that's, it's a good hive, but I have to make it queenless. So I have to snatch that queen out, and I can put her in another nuke somewhere, and I can bring her back later. But I need to do this. I need to get that queen out of there about, they say 12 hours ahead of time before I put this back in. But I've had people tell me they've done it in 1 hour and they've done it in 24 hours, but 12 hours is a good rule of thumb on that. They have to know they're queenless. Okay.
Dave, sorry to interrupt again, but I might have missed earlier when you had the frame that had the nails instead of ears, but I didn't hear why you replaced the ears with nails.
Okay, you're fixing to learn that.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this is the frame. All right, this is the frame I just dusted. Okay, y'all are good at pretending, right? This is the frame I just dusted. Now I'm gonna push these nails in now. It's got to fit inside a box. Now I'm taking 3/4 inch spacers, or you can use an entrance reducer, either one. Laying it down. And you're laying this down. The frame has to fit inside this box. And if those ears were on it, it wouldn't. Okay?
Gotcha.
You understand now?
Yep.
Got it? Some people do this and they cut grooves in the box they're going to use on top, just like that. To me, this is easier than doing all that, but I found that this works really well for me. Now, also something else you won't find in the literature. Now, all right, now you put that frame with those eggs in it right on top of a box, on top of 3/4 inch spacers. Okay, so it's up. So it's kind of up by itself. And if it gets a little bit cool or something, you might lose it. So we want to protect it. Now, I've got a folded up sheet that canvas cloth that I put in there, but I learned this the hard way, is if I lay that canvas cloth directly on top of that frame, it might push it down and sag. So I got a little board I put on top of that frame to hold it up. And then I take my canvas cloth and I put it right on top of that. That kind of insulates it.
Hey,
Everybody
Dave,
get that?
I have a question.
Okay.
Are your bullets out of there now?
Yes, I
Pulled them out.
Yes.
You pulled them out as soon as you floured it, basically.
Yeah, right after I flour it, a good way to do that is don't pull them out where they're right side up. Turn it over and pull them out and try to knock all the loose flour out of it and then pull them out. That way you don't get any flour inside. I should have went over that. I'm glad you brought that up, Jeanette. Okay.
Well, I interrupted you. That was why.
That's okay. But y'all saw the process, right? Hopefully everybody understood it. Any questions about that? That's the Hopkins method. Now,
Okay, I have a question.
Okay, John Scott.
You've had that frame that you put the bullets in, but you said you had to wait 12 to 24 hours after the other hive's queenless. Where is that frame that you bulleted and floured?
Well, oh no, you prepared this cell builder 12 to 24 hours before you started pulling that frame out.
To bullet?
Yeah, to bullet.
Okay, thank you.
You started preparing that ahead of time. You know, you got one in mind before you even start the process. And the minute you see eggs in there, go fix that cell builder. Because you can leave those eggs in there one more day or something until you see that there's a little small larva. You know, go fix that cell builder. It has to be ready ahead of time. Okay. Any other questions about the Hopkins method? Okay, in like 4 days after, you can go back in there and look and see if you got queen cells. And put it right back in. On the 9th day, after you've moved it, you can pull it out, cut them out, cut those cells out, put them in your mating nukes. Again, you can use a queen castle or you can a whole nuke. But the idea is not that you need to use that queen immediately, but that you've got 2 or 3 queens laying here all summer. You know, when that dink hive finally dies or she finally quits laying, you got another queen ready right then. You don't have to call up anybody. You don't have to do anything. You know, they'll keep really good in these 2-frame nukes. They won't swarm because there's not enough bees in there. They know it's not enough bees to swarm because they won't, they can't make enough.
If you cut each queen cell into its own nuke or section, you don't put more than one anywhere, right? Too much.
It depends on what you want to do. If you've made 6 queen cells, you only got 3 mating nukes, put 2 in each one. I mean, let them go at it just like normal.
Okay.
So Dave, those extra queens that you've got parked over in their own little parking lot there, you're having to, I'm taking it, you're going to have to manually feed those, right? Because they're not going to have a whole hive worth of foragers out pulling in food for them.
To begin with, you'll have to feed them. But, you know, as the summer goes on, you get into late May and June and July, they can hold their own. You don't want them to get too much food, okay? You just want them to keep making bees. And again, if they get crowded and you got a weak hive, take that frame out and put it over in a hive that needs some bees and put an empty one back in there. As long as that queen stays in there and you've got enough bees, you can use that nuke to work for you. Okay.
So in decent weather, the 2 frames should be able to hold their own.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't want them to get, they won't swarm out of that usually. Again, just because I said that, you're going to try it and they're going to swarm out of it. You know, I get it. But I haven't had any trouble with them swarming out. But I have had trouble with it being a really good year, nectar flow, and they fill everything up with nectar and honey, and they can't, she stops laying. And when she does that, you get into another whole issue, you know. But like I said, you can use that to your advantage. You got a whole frame of brood there, because this queen's really good. You know, you can take it out and put it in a weak colony, put another one in, or just use it to draw comb. Put a foundation in there. When it gets drawn, take it out, put another one in there. Drawn comb's gold. You know that, right?
Yes.
Use it to your advantage. Okay.
David, somebody's asking in the chat if a 22 is big enough.
I don't think a 20, you know, truthfully, I've had better luck with the 25s.
Okay.
But if you don't have them, it's a Q-tip.
Oh, Q-tip.
Okay. It doesn't do as good a job. Okay. And you don't want to push it in quite as far.
What caliber is that Q-tip?
That Q-tip, I don't know. I guess I don't know. It's about 25. I mean, it won't stretch out that cell like the 25 will. I like for that cell to be stretched out just a little bit, because it's more like a real queen cell, you know, when it's a little bit bigger.
Is that what triggers them? The size of the cell opening?
Not the size of the cell, but it helps them get more royal jelly in there.
Okay.
Volume of royal jelly.
So David,
Yes, sir.
if you have that queen castle with 4 active queens in there, couldn't you just use those to make 4 nukes and then 4 hives?
Absolutely. One of the things that I like about this particular setup, y'all can still see it all right? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so I need a queen, right? My gangbuster hive queen died, and I need to get another one. And this queen's been laying really good right here. So I go in and I find her, and I put her in that. I introduce her to that other hive. One thing I like about this, now I've got a queen in this section. I have no queens in this section, but I've got a lot of bees. I got a full frame nuke now because this divider will come out. See that? How easy that was? Queen, 2 frames, brood, everything, but I took the queen out. I lifted the divider out. Now I've got a full frame nuke.
Nice.
Okay. That's one of the reasons I like that. Okay. Now, how am I doing on time?
It's 7:20, and I think we had you down for 7:30. You got another 10 minutes.
Okay, I got 2. Again, I'm not going to repeat myself and tell you the steps every time, but I am going to show you a couple of more methods. Okay. I want to give you, like I said, you have to find what you like. If you don't find that, you won't do it.
Hey, I don't think you told us when we cut out the piece of the foundation that has the queen cell on it. You didn't tell us how to adhere it. Are you just pressing it onto another frame, or
most of the time?
Okay.
You know, that's why you want to leave a lot of room on it, around it, so when you cut it out, you know, you got enough that you can actually stick it between 2 frames like so, and it stays up. You know, you can.
Make sure you lick it first, though, Tracy.
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure about that. Anyway, that's the Hopkins method, and I wanted to tell you that was originally published in case anybody thinks it don't work. It was originally published in 1886, and people have been using it ever since. Okay. The next method I'm going to talk about is the alley method. It was published in 1883. People have been using it ever since. It's kind of the same process. You put a sheet of foundation in there. You let them draw it out and get eggs on it. Once they get their eggs on it, you take a knife. Again, you know, I do the same thing with it. I do the same thing. It's got eggs. I cut it into strips like so. 1, 2, 3. Cut it into strips like so. Okay, little strips. You see the little strips? Then I take those strips and I do the bullet thing. Space them out again, and the flower thing again on the little strips. After I do that, and I'll put them onto a top bar, and I'll have to be real careful. I have to remember where the bullets were, or you could do it with the bullets in there, I guess. And then you just kind of press it down onto the frame. Now, one thing that might happen, it depends on the temperature, is the thing might fall off. Had that happened before. Okay, so you see the little zip tie here? Where is it? You see the little zip tie?
Yeah.
All right, you can zip tie in different places to hold it on. Then you've got queen cells. Okay, same thing. Put it back in the cell builder that you've created before. That's the alley method. You can put a row here. You can also put a row on the bottom bar, because I'm using a medium frame in a deep hive. Okay, you understand that part? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions about the alley method? I mean, yeah, the alley method. Same thing, just a little bit different. And then I'm going to show you about the Miller method. I've used this one before. This is not my favorite. My favorite of these three methods is the first method that I showed you. But you take your comb, your foundation, and you cut it. See the angles? I'm sure you see the angles.
Yeah.
So you cut it. You put that in, you let the queen lay in it, and you pull it back out. Okay, it's got eggs all over it, but it looks a little different. When you pull it out, now it looks like this. It's rounded, it's not sharp anymore. You know why that is? The bees have added wax to it. You can't use it like that, because around the edges here, what have they done? You got any ideas?
A drone cells?
That's where the drones are, right around the edges. So you've got to take a knife, a pair of scissors. You got to cut it. You got to cut it back to its original shape. You got to cut all those drone cells off of there. Otherwise, you got nothing. Cut it back. Got to make sure I leave. Now, you know, again, you're cutting this. It's still in the frame. You're not taking this out of the frame. But after you cut it, you can take your fingers and you go along the edges like so. You leave a good cell, and you squeeze here and you squeeze there and you squeeze there. And you just try to leave one good cell around the edges of that. And you put that back in there. And they'll pull queen cells. Okay, as long as you got all the drones off, they'll pull queen cells. Now that's the what method is that? That's the Miller method.
So one good cell per point.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, and if you're not sure, you're scared to do it because it's most of the time this is used wax. Most of the time you can squeeze good wax and it will do it. But me's trying to squeeze this old wax right here. It's just not doing what it's supposed to. But if you want to make sure, you can take your little knife or something and you can destroy those cells close to it and just leave that one cell. Okay? You got it? Make sense? That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
I want to keep this one good cell right here, so I'm going to take my knife, I'm going to cut that off and crush that, cut that off and crush that, and I've got that one cell. And that way I can cut it out whenever I need it. Okay. Now, anybody got any questions about the 3 methods that I have explained? If you don't have any right now, and you happen to think of one later, he's going to put up slide number 33. That's got my email on it and my phone number. You feel free to call me. I can't answer it in 5 minutes, but I will get back to you. Okay. So if you got questions now, ask them. If you don't, and you think of one later, get in touch with me. And I think that I'm ready to turn this over to.
Can everybody see Dave's contact information?
Yep.
Okay. Is everybody good?
I hope you learned something. I'm gonna turn it over to Ross now.
Hang on, Ross, 1 second. I have the speakers for EAS. It's Deborah Delaney, Kevin England, INGLIN. I think he's the
Northwest
guy.
New Jersey. And who else?
Kevin
Everybody-
Kevin England runs the New Jersey Beekeepers, I think.
Yes. he does.
Juliana Rangel,
Yes.
John Benham,
He's
Jamie
the
Ellis.
Beekeeper in Kentucky. And who
Jamie
else?
Ellis from University of Florida. He's terrific. I've heard him.
Yes.
Tammy Horn Potter. I think she's the inspector in Kentucky. Is that right? Or
Yes.
was?
Yes.
And Kent Williams.
He's a master beekeeper in Kentucky.
So those are your speakers for EAS in August in Louisville.
And that's not all. That's just a partial list.
Right.
Just so
Yeah.
you know. Okay. Any questions? All right. Thanks. I think Ross is up next.
Hey Ross, give us a little.
Thank you, Dave.
Give us a little brief bio, Ross, before you get started.
Sure thing. Thanks a lot, David, for that. That was really informative. Well, I've been beekeeping for 10 years around Indianapolis and pretty much every city that touches Indy. I think I have like 187 hives or so now. See, I keep bees for a lot of different people, clients, and businesses. I remove a lot of bees. It's my life all the time, so I'm a full-time beekeeper. And today I'm going to talk about swarm traps. So give me a sec to share my screen. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. I don't have any cool stuff in front of me like David, unfortunately, so you'll have to do it some pictures. Okay, so some tips and tricks here. So for me, my purpose was, this is back in 2018. I think I just got up to around 100 hives. I remember it very specifically. I had about 104 hives or something I put into winter. You know, a lot of those bees I've had for over 3 years. And I was really just a super green beekeeper. I mean, I didn't want to use any chemicals whatsoever, nothing. I didn't want to treat, I wanted to be like Mr. like Robin Hood times beekeeping. And after that winter, I had like 6 or 8 colonies left. It was a huge loss, just an absolutely huge loss. So I was thinking like, man, how do I fill all these boxes up and, you know, all this money and what do I do? And I just was like, I got to do it. I heard about Tim Ives putting all these swarm traps out and having like a really high percentage. So I was like, I'm going to do it. So I had my purpose and I started making my plan. And the next thing was to just ask. So I asked Facebook, I asked my friends here if I could set a swarm trap in someone's yard. And I said, I'd come by every couple weeks. And if I caught a swarm, I'd give you some honey. And if you can see the comments on there, quite a few people offered their place. That was nice. So I contacted everyone that said I could use their yard or their property or somewhere. And I started putting it on like, a map. I used just Google Maps, and I wrote down everybody's address to get an idea where all these people lived. And then I told them I'd contact them about setting up a swarm trap. And this is not, I had people saying they had land in Trafalgar, and someone's like, oh, I have something in Kentucky, we have some land down there. And so, it's like, okay, where am I going to do this? So I had this, I started this sometime before. I started like tracking where I was doing all my bee removals, and I've done so many more. I mean, I probably do 30 a year or so. And I probably do like 24 swarms a year and probably like 20 to 30 cutouts. So, I have a map of where trees are and all sorts of stuff. I'm going to actually show you. I think it'd be a good time to show you. I think I can pull it up here. Safari. My Maps. Okay, so I started using this program called Google My Maps. This is different from Google Maps. So I have these different maps I've created for different things. So I have this, let's see here. These were some bee removals I've done. And I really have not kept up on this. This was something I was doing in like 2007.
Ross, we're still seeing your swarm traps.
Okay. Let's try share screen again. Stop share. Share screen. Safari. Okay. Share. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to go back. So this is the program. It's called Google My Maps up here in the top left-hand corner. So these are some different maps I've made, and I was looking at bee removals. And I had this already. And I thought maybe I could use this because I need to track a bunch of stuff. So these were my swarm trap sites here. So this way I was able to color code them with, did I set the trap or have I baited it? And then I started, I couldn't even remember where I put them all, honestly, once I started doing it. But I needed to know, like, is the box still there? In some of these places, I'm going to tell you, I mean, I've left some equipment there. Because I just haven't been, like this one over here by the airport. I'm just not over there that much. So this was kind of neat. I had this map of everyone's addresses, and then, the fun work of trying to set all these swarm traps up. And I'm going to get into, how and what I did. So let me go back to the PowerPoint.
I noticed you hid your fishing map pretty quickly there. You didn't want us looking at your fishing map while it was on the screen.
Fishing map. I have a forage map where all my foraged foods are in the city are.
Your what are those mushrooms that we're all looking? Your morel mushroom map.
Ginseng.
Nice.
If it's a wild food and you can eat it, I've probably harvested and sold it to a restaurant. Okay, so let's see. I want to start this. Let's see. Play from current slide. Okay. So really for me, one of the first things I wanted to start with was like places that I actually removed bees from. I know that there were bees there. I took bees out of the house. So I started reaching back to people that would call me and tell me that they had bees in their house, or maybe I was there to catch a swarm or something. So this particular house, this was the first one I did. This was out in Zionsville, and this was like 3 stories up. I had taken the bees out away from this like chimney in the soffit, and I put that one up there. So for me, and I'm going to show you pictures of all this, but there's a lot of different ways to do everything, but I definitely knew that, all you ever hear about swarm traps is, try to find a, brood comb and lemongrass. So there's a lot of different products out there, but what I was doing was just, I figured, I had all these old boxes. I've bought out a lot of older beekeepers. I have hundreds of boxes, and what else would attract bees than something that's had bees in it? That was kind of my thinking. Might be harder to get it up there. It's heavier because it's wood, but to me, it made sense. So here's another one. This is also up near Zionsville, but I was just putting hives around trees with ratchet straps. I would do different configurations, but I've done this in years past, and I've had them break as the tree grows. So there's different ways you can do this with a hook. This one, is right across from Steve Doty's house. So that was funny. I have a chef friend, and he said, "Oh, my dad lives over on 13," and he told me where to go. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, the next house up is Steve Doty." So I thought that was a good one. This is in McCordsville. So a lot of people will try to do swarm traps, and they think they can just throw a nuke box up there. You might get one, you might, but the author, an authority, I'd say, on swarm trap, Tom Seeley. He has some books on all this that are so fascinating. But what he figured out was that bees normally want 16 liters of volume, which is about the size of a deep hive body. So, I was doing it in different configurations. These are just 2 nukes stacked on top of themselves. And I know this is true. This is really interesting. I've been to a lot of houses that people think that bees are moving in, and I'll go in there and there are bees coming into the house, but I put my ear on the wall, and I've heard bees, scout bees in a hollow space, scoping it out. Okay. So I've heard that they'll actually walk it out, but I heard times where bees were like bouncing off of the walls almost to like measure it in a way, so they're looking for this hollow void space. And I'm going to talk about that too, because a lot of people think they can just put a brand new hive out with frames of plastic foundation and, put some lemongrass oil in there, but they need a hollow space. This one's in like Allisonville and 80th or so. So you can see, I don't know if you can see my mouse, or what is this, a pen?
Yeah, it's showing up.
Pen.
Yeah,
my
it's showing up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. They had some bees that swarmed the year before in these like really tall pine trees, and they were having like a family reunion, and I just like took a 20-foot ladder up in these pine trees and just went up there, climbed it, snipped a branch and put it in a box. And it was like the coolest thing ever. And I contacted them, and they were so happy to want to do this. Okay. So I started, filling my spots green if I actually got there and put a box up. And then boom, the first swarm of the year. This was 426. This is downtown. Usually the first swarms I get are downtown. It's a bit warmer, the concrete jungle. It warms things up a little faster. So I knew, oh man, this, it's swarm time here. And I didn't have all my traps out. So I just kept setting them up. This was in Carmel. This one fell down. I had to put it back up. And I'm going to talk about how I baited the hives and everything. I just kind of wanted you to see what I was doing. Okay. This is the kind of stuff I would use. Okay. I'm not putting that nice new fresh painted hive out there. I'm putting the one that's about to fall apart. The more holes it had, the better. Okay. I know not everybody has these, but I mean, I got a lot of those, so I wasn't really too particular about having this little tiny hole or anything like that. I wanted them to know that there was comb in there, and to know that it was protected from the elements, and that it was scented. And if in the back right there, you see that purple, that's a cheese puff container. I don't eat cheese puffs, but any friends that do, they give me the containers. That's for pine needles and pine chips and smoker fuel. That's so it stays dry. Everybody's got their something. Okay. Here's another one. Just, this some play set that nobody hasn't used in 10 years. Just trying to get it up off the ground. I was trying to get it to be at least 6 feet if I could. Higher is better, but you can't always get that high. So I was happy to put that one there. Oop. This is just like on some, you see what I'm doing. I even put one right outside my doorstep. I live in a very there's no woods really around here. I was told by an old beekeeper that he would put an old nuke box every year outside his doorstep. Just put it right there. And he said for like 20 years, like he caught a swarm every year, but just a couple. So I thought, what? So I did that too. I put one right outside my doorstep, just like that. Then this is a video. I'm going to hit play. Hopefully you can watch it. I get a cell phone, a message from one of the workers at that first house I put bees at. Okay. Short video, but hopefully you can see that it's not choppy. See that? I don't know how that came across to you in Zoom, but hopefully you can see that there are bees there.
Yep.
So I would get a call like that, you know, that you say, I'm not sure if they're in there, but they're checking it out. Ooh, yeah. And then I'd get, you know, then this homeowner sends me a video shortly after. This is the one that was on the roof. So it's hard for me to tell, you know, are they just checking it out? Is there bees in there? And the homeowners don't know, but I know it's a good thing. I know it's a good thing that bees know it's there. That's what you want. And there's tricks to getting bees to find it. This is, yeah, 2 seconds. Okay. And then, you know, this was that double stack nuke box. The homeowner said, I think there's bees in there. Hey, this was that double stack nuke box. Looks ugly, but to me, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, so what I was doing, at least in this, I was doing all sorts of different stuff. I was trying everything. But in this configuration, all I did was put one drawn comb in the bottom and one drawn comb in the top, and that's it. And I did put some scent in there, and there's 3 different ways that I would try to do scents. But I knew what I was doing with that hollow space. You know, I knew I'd have some work ahead of me, but I do it all the time anyways. It's not hard for me to cut comb. You know, so that was awesome. And this one, I posted this on the Central Indiana page. I was real happy about this one because which one is this? That's the one right across from Steve Doty's house. Yep. That was a good one. That was a huge swarm, just absolutely huge. Sorry, Steve. That's just a piece of plywood on top of a hive body.
Swarm trap.
All right. So this is what that looked like in there. I had four frames and then this lid. So this actually came right out. That very tall frame in the back, that was perfectly perpendicular with the 4th frame. So I could just pull it straight up and then they went wonky. And these are all just little pieces of comb. So I could just smoke them off one by one, get the comb. It would have been great for David's presentation, you know, if there were eggs in it.
Yep.
So this is beautiful here. So, you know, I was getting swarms here. This was a fun swarm I did. They were moving into a grill. But here, now I'm getting into more like what the configuration looks like. So sometimes I would just throw 1 or 2 frames in there. I started doing this. These are some frames I have that are they're like a wedge or top that kind of slopes down into a point. The homeowner's son, I had him up there on the roof. He's never seen bees. He never touched bees a day in his life.
Nice. What do you see in those holes?
Yeah, that's the dad. So
I mean, there's a lot more bees than that.
okay, I have a couple pictures of what's going on here. So this was a really small swarm, super small. They only really took up about 3 frames. But what was nice is not hollow space. You know, I think if I do this again, I'm just going to put empty frames in there without foundation and hopefully they draw it right. But I left a lot of hollow space in there. You know, they need to feel that. They need to know that. And I was even lucky enough. This is the one right outside my doorstep. Right there. Caught one. Couldn't believe it. There's no bee, no one around me has bees, so I thought. But there are some bad things too. Okay. This is the very first house where there were bees. But unfortunately, okay, I had already removed bees from this house in the same spot, but we were not in charge of repairs. And I told them you absolutely have to put insulation in that soffit when you make the repair, and they didn't. So I kind of attracted the bees back and they moved back into where they were. do the job twice. And that's 4 pieces of I mean, you see how high that is. That's deathly right there. Are bees worth it to you? You know, that's serious. So I felt bad about that one because I wasn't sure if I was the one that caused that because I brought the swarm box or what. Okay, so here's some things to consider: is the size of the box. They also, you know, people try all sorts of things. People try those like compressed cardboard kind of flower pots, and they put like a waterproofing on there. I've seen those work a number of times. They're really cheap. You want to think about the direction and getting sunlight, just like setting up a beehive. I would try to face them southeast, if possible. They absolutely have to be protected from the elements. You know, the bees know if they're gonna get all wet if it rains. So bait, you know, like I said, you want probably the darkest comb you have. I was using the darkest, cruddiest combs. I just saw someone on Facebook today say that they're going to set up 3 comb traps or 3 swarm traps because they had hives that died, and they're putting up like a whole box of comb. Don't do that to your sweet, precious comb. It's going to get demolished. And if you don't get back to that swarm trap and you got 5, 6 nice comb in there, you don't want the moth to get it. You know, just use one. If you have a little honey in that comb, if it's a hive that might have died and maybe there's some honey in the corners, that's even better. If you can get a little honey in there and put it out early, you're going to get bees to rob it out, and then they always know it's there. They remember it's there. I was even sometimes putting honey, like I would just like put honey on the entrance or bottom board. I tried that to see if I could lure them with. Sometimes I'll put honey on the whole top of the hive. You know, once the sun in the morning, if the sun can hit it in the morning, they're likely to find it. If you do it in the middle of the day in spring, not, you know, no guarantees. So for the scent or for the bait, I tried just about everything. I've done just straight lemongrass oil. I've bought honey, swarm commander. I actually, one of my favorite things I ever got was something I bought at bee school, and I wasn't sure if it was from Graham, but it looked like a real small, it looked like the size of a quarter, but it was like chapstick, you know, a little plastic top you undid. And it was his little swarm thing that he made. So you'd put a little on a Q-tip, maybe on both ends of a Q-tip, and cut it in half. And then I'd put that half of a Q-tip like in a cell or like somewhere in the comb. I would do that. It doesn't take very much. Remember that bees sense in parts per billion. So sharks sense blood in the water in parts per million. So they only need a real little bit. I also bought these, let's see if I can see. I also bought these little like 1 milliliter like valves, like not valves, but like little tubes. Trying to think if I can see, stop share, start share. Safari. These are what I use the most, I'd say. Not enough on there. Yeah, 1 millimeter. These things. Can you guys see this right here? The internet. Do you see Google? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I swear it was like 2,000 or 6,000 for like $9. And I have a bag. I wish this was in person. I would just hand them out like gifts to everyone. I mean, I have so many of these things, but you only put just a little bit in there, just a little bit, you know, just 1 or 2 drops, and you actually like close the lid and then you open it just a little. So the stuff doesn't evaporate out of there, because you want it to slowly leak out over the course of a week or 2. Because that's how long I would check. You'll go back and rebait these things. So
What are you putting in there, Ross?
I would put lemongrass or the Swarm Commander stuff. When you buy from Man Lake, they have like a signature, you know, swarm lure. It comes in one of these inside of an envelope, and you're supposed to, and it's closed, and you don't even open up the envelope. It says to put the whole envelope in there. And those are like $6 a piece or something like that. Let's see. Stop share. Start share. Yep. Something else to consider is, make sure that you're going to be able to remove it. Think about that. Once it's full of bees, am I able to get this thing from this spot? Coming down the ladder and blocking it up. How you're going to remove the comb. And then double up. This is probably some of the best advice is if you're successful in one area, take the box, take the bees out, put another one right back up. Because a lot of times you'll catch those after swarms or you'll just get another one. Sometimes you'll get 3 or 4 in one spot. And that's really it on swarm traps. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any.
Ross, I believe I understood you to say that probably the best lure is the comb.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would do a piece of comb over any scent or anything whatsoever. I would just do comb. But really, if you can have comb and a lemongrass smell, that you're going to be in business. I would do this with people I would mentor, and they would, they'd put them up in like a deer stand or something up in the tree. That they would do different things, and it works. It really does. I have a lot of neat swarm stories, as I'm sure as we all do. But that was my experience. It was a good one. I hope.
How long was lemongrass?
Something about lemongrass oil, Dwayne?
Yeah, how long does it last in a vial?
In a vial, when you leave it cracked, up to 2 weeks, it still kind of has a smell there. I was kind of trying to get to all the spots every 2 to 3 weeks if I could and put a little bit more in there. So I put a little in the vial. I do a little bit, like maybe on the comb on one of the bars. I would just do a very thin little tiny little amount. And then I would always put a little bit on that landing board.
I've tried some putting it on a cotton ball inside of a plastic bag.
The bag's a good idea. If you just did the cotton ball, it would probably evaporate, but the bag's a good one. The bag would be a really good one.
Okay.
I had a question about the double up thing, Ross. I had that happen one year when you're at my house. They just kept going to the same 2 trees, and finally we had lopped all the little branches out of the trees. So are they going to like the queen pheromone from the swarm I just took away? Is that like the residual? Is that why they're going there?
I'd say yes. I really would. They're fanning that scent when they first land there, and there's something magical about that one branch. Once they've been on that branch, that they sense and they know that bees have been all over it.
And then would you tell everybody the name of that Tom Seeley book so we can use that as a reference?
I wish I knew.
Isn't that Honeybee Democracy?
Yes.
He has a few, but one in particular I thought was more about swarming. He has another book I've read called Chase about bee hunting, which is super, super fascinating. He has a really, really great video about how he bee hunts, and he'll just sit there in this chair and have a little piece of honeycomb and mark every bee with a paint and time how long it takes for them to come back.
Wow.
It's a real fascinating video. If you'd ever have a lot of time on your hands. Bee hunting.
So that's Tom Seeley, Seeley.
I wonder if he uses a 25 caliber bullet for that hunting.
Well, I don't know, but we should ask.
How far away do you recommend putting swarm traps from your hives?
At least 10 feet, but 30 feet out. And then, right at 6 feet if you can. If you have like an overhanging deck, I've caught them on, someone had bees in their backyard. The backyard really swooped down and they had those like retaining walls with brick. And I put one right there. But it was like, so it was on the edge of it, was overhanging that little brick area, and it was perfect because it was high up. So if you have any way to get it higher, kind of off the ground, you'll get better results.
Okay.
But you shouldn't ever let your bees swarm. Just in case. But just in case, you should have a swarm trap in case you catch the neighbor's bees.
I think you should also feel very confident about replenishing the feral bee supply in your area if it happens to you.
I have one more question about when you said you use nukes. And I've heard some people say don't use nuke boxes, but you used a double nuke. So you just put 2 on top of each other and a frame in each one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could have just done one frame. I caught 4 that way that year.
Ross, that double stacked nuke, there's no bottom in the top one, right?
Nope. It's just, all my nuke boxes are just standard boxes. And then I can just have a little bottom board and I use like recycled wood for the top. And that way I can always add another one.
So I was just asking, because it's one large cavity then.
One large cavity. I would also staple. That's a good tip is I would use a staple gun and, I'd staple the bottom board to the nuke and I'd staple the nukes together because, you're going to be moving it and you don't want it to fall apart on you. So I would do that ahead of time. And
so you take the bottoms out of both nuke boxes.
I'd use one bottom on the very bottom. So it was just like if you had a double stack nuke, it'd be all wide open in there.
Okay.
And then, as far as when to take it down, just like the same, I think I was taking them down late June and early July, because I'm sure, hopefully we all know the saying about a swarm in July, not worth a fly. Although I'd love to show you this picture. I got a call from a beekeeper about a swarm in July. And she said, Ross, I'm telling you, it's big. I have 7 hives over here and it's a big swarm. And it was like July, like 20. So it was late. And I know better. And I called another beekeeper over there and he had to use a refrigerator box. The swarm was longer than he was. And it filled 3 deep boxes and they were overflowing. So
do you treat your bees when you catch them in a swarm, and you have any problems bringing back any kind of germs or bacteria and mites and things?
I'm really glad you said that. I started thinking about that because, I've treated my hives already. Any hives that I haven't treated, I might be doing now. But, to have a yard that, okay, there shouldn't be any mites here right now. If there are, there's not drones flying, it's clean. And then you're bringing a huge swarm in. So, yeah, I would think about that. So depending on the time of year and your preferences, there's different ways to do it. I think I would, make sure that there was a queen and she's laying. I'd make sure that she's laying so that any treatment wouldn't get them to abscond. And then I would treat them. Or, what you should do is really test them first. If you can do a drop test or a mite wash, but sometimes I'll just go ahead and treat them. Depending on the time of year, I'll use something different. Good question. Another thing you can, with swarms, I learned this a few years ago. Swarms are really great at making queen cells.
They are, yeah.
Yeah, they're fantastic. They're already, all the bees are loaded up with honey and resources. So you can, put a swarm in a box, let that queen get laying for just a few days, and you find that frame that she's laying on, and you remove the queen. Now they are a desperate hive full of resources, and you can enter some material in there. I would throw a graft in there, but you could throw a cell in there of eggs and you're going to get a lot of queen cells. You could get them started and then take it out and put the queen back, which is something to know. You can do things with that with a fresh swarm.
Ross, you were talking about how long to leave them up. I'll tell you a story. Like I left the swarm trap up way too long. I just didn't get to it. You know how beekeepers do. I got so many other things. I'm just gonna leave it up. And when I finally got to it, and I think it was October, I had a swarm in it, but it was a swarm of mice. It wasn't a swarm of bees. And it was 12 foot up a tree, and I picked it up, and all these mice just come all over me.
Yeah.
That'd have been a hospital trip for me.
There's any other questions about, why a hive would swarm, how to prevent them from swarming? I'm glad to answer any questions if there's still time. If not, it's all right.
Ross, we could have you a whole nother time to talk about how to prevent swarms, right? That's not a one question thing.
It's hard for me not to start talking.
No, yeah. I'm happy to have it. I'm just saying we could go a whole nother hour about how to prevent swarming. That's a whole nother day.
Yep. There's some things you could do, but you got to be in there. But
Tracy, you said you had an online question for Dave.
I do. Dave, there was an email question for you. Is there a way to ensure that the queen will lay on a particular frame for grafting? And how early can you start grafting in the Indianapolis area?
Well, I put up the queen drone timeline for you to get a sense of when you can start drafting. About after you see drone cells that have been capped about 3 or 4 days, you can begin grafting. That's my calendar for when I start drafting. Oh, and let me tell you, that first graft is not going to be as successful because anything can happen. You got bad weather that early. You got a lot of things. So better to wait a little bit longer. But, you can, if you're going to graft, you can graft that early and see what happens. Okay.
And then did you hear the first question? Is there a way to ensure that the queen will lay on a particular frame for grafting?
Well, I have another box. It's called a timing box that I graph, and I have a timing box, and I'll try to explain it to you, but I have, it's a 10 frame, and I have divided it into 3 parts. And I have some vertical queen excluders that I separate the box into 3 parts. I put how can I explain this? I separate it into thirds. I put 3 frames in each section. It's a 10 frame, but I have to have a little room there because I've got those 2 queen excluders. And I let the queen lay in the center, but she can't get to the outside frames because she's trapped within those 3 frames. And on the outside, if I want the queen to lay in specific frames, I will take frames out of the center section that have brood in them already, that are fully capped, and put them to the outside. And I'll take an empty frame, or sometimes even 2. If I get 2 frames out of the middle, I'll put empty frames in where the queen is. And just about, 95% of the time, within a few days, she'll be laying in those frames because she can't get anywhere else. You know what I mean? That makes sense? Did that answer the person's question? You're muted, Tracy.
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Ross. It was great.
Thank you, Ross.
And,
yeah.
Ross, we should do like a swarm catching competition somehow on our Facebook page. Everybody should chart or send pictures of what they catch. That would be really fun.
We have to figure out, do we want to go by pounds of bees or number of swarms?
Well, we can, as an entire club, compete against Ross.
Okay, I think we're ready now for Peg's presentation on splits.
Hang on, we're getting set up. I hope.
Peter's got to get his costume on, right?
That's right. Well, you've had a great discussion from experts, and I certainly did not propose to be an expert, but I wanted to report on 2 events that I was involved in this past year, making 2 different kinds of splits. and how we did it and why we did it.
Peg, could you maybe mute and then unmute? Your audio is coming through pretty garbled.
I am unmuted.
No, I'm saying, can you like mute, unmute? Maybe that'll get it to clear up. It's just got a lot of reverb. Is everybody else hearing that, or is it just me? Yeah, it's a bit distorted.
Hang on. Where's my experts?
No.
Time out.
It's not the end of the world. If I was just thinking, if we can clear it up pretty quickly, that it'd be better for everybody to be able to hear.
Okay, she's grabbing a headset.
Okay. Is that any better?
Yes.
All right, Peg, you're fine. Continue
Okay.
on. I just had to find the right button to.
I'm gonna go ahead and mute everybody else just to make sure that we don't get any feedback.
So this is a picture of the Club Hive on July 6th. And it is actually 3 deep boxes with 2 supers, medium supers on top. The pink boxes in the middle are actually 2 shallow supers glued together, acting as a deep. And trust me, that hive was huge. But we had a bigger problem than just the hive being large, is the stand was tipping, and at some point it was going to tip over. So with the help of Tracy and Dan is in the suit back there, and Tracy's husband, we had decided to fix the stand and split the hive and do a walkaway split. Next slide. So splitting a hive, splitting the resources of the existing hive, and somebody gets a queen and somebody doesn't. So literally after we fixed this took about 3 hours between the building the frame so it wouldn't tip over and then splitting the hive. We looked at every frame and made sure that each hive got their fair share of eggs and larvae, capped brood. And we decided because of the hive was so big, we decided not to go looking for the queen. You got to remember this was July 6th and it was hot. Okay, next slide. All right. This is always helpful to know how long it takes to make a queen. Dave was really good about showing us that. And it's always a good idea to pull out your charts and figure out what the timing is. I'm going to add Dave's chart to mine because I sort of learned as we did this, when the workers figure it out, what they feed it, what the queen is going to get, and then how long it's going to take. The first time I tried a split on my own at my own house, I did it too early and found out, Dave, there, even if I made a queen, there were no drones for mating. So I put it back together and told them, sorry, ladies, let's try again some other time. So next slide. All right, so here's our nice picture about what we're looking for once we get the queen to when a queen is laying and how long it will take. And these are all those lovely little things that we need to know. Rain, we can't do anything about. So 3 to 5 weeks, we want to see new larvae. So when we split it, we added additional boxes. So each had 2 deeps and at least 1 medium. Then we ended up with 1 with cool and 1 with creek. And at that point, that's when we started looking to see who had the queen. It was a game, who had the queen. I looked at cool and thought, yeah, I see eggs. She's good. Then I looked at creek and said, I don't see any eggs. I don't see any larvae. So Tracy and I put a queen in creek, and about 3 days later when I checked, I found a dead queen. So obviously I didn't do a very good job identifying where the queen actually was, but in the interim, the bees know better. Cool had made her own queen cell, and I actually saw them. So I said, aha, the queens are, I mean, the workers are building their own queen, and will actually have a queen thanks to their genetic history.
Peg, did you remember any demeanor difference in those two hives when you got in there? Do you remember? You thought
the first time we had the full-blown hive, that was one of the nicest hives we had. I mean, we were in there and they didn't bother us at all. They were very nice, and was kind of surprising, especially since what we were doing to them, and they just kind of did what they wanted, and we were hoping that we could, you know, that would continue. I really haven't seen that much of a difference in either one of the hives this past summer. Not as bad as the one at my house, but
I meant specifically when you open them up thinking you were looking for a queen. Did anybody, because usually a hive that's not queen right, you can kind of, they have a different tone, or they're immediately you're like, these aren't quite the same.
Well, that's what was one of the things that you are listening for, kind of a higher pitch in the sound. And that's one of the criteria I thought that the one on the right didn't have a queen, because there was some of that, but that proved to be wrong.
Okay.
Anyway, so I'm not taking that as a sole deciding factor. Obviously, I picked wrong.
Good to know.
Okay, now, so that one worked out real well, and we ended up with 2 large hives for the summer. Now, this is something I tried at my house. These are my hives last summer. I had 3. Next. And like Dave, I followed what Dave said. I found queen cells in my hive. And so I took one out and I put it in the left box here, which is the 2-frame nuke, and added another frame that had some room and a little bit of all the other required, you know, there was a little bit of brood and a little bit of honey, or a little bit of nectar. And I just, on a whim, put them in there and would check them once a week. And what happened was, like you said, Dave, I grew a queen. She went out and got mated, and then all of a sudden I've got eggs between 3 and 5 weeks later. And then it got busy, but in my case, I wanted to grow that. So I put the 2-frame into the 5-frame. And let it grow to a full 5-frame. And then I went looking for another queen cell, and lo and behold, they gave me one. So I did it again. And over the summer, I built up 2 full-size hives, and they're now located at Tracy's farm. So it was kind of interesting to listen to your talk, because I accidentally did it.
Exactly what you said.
And exactly what you said. Yeah, I was doing it for 2 purposes. One, what would happen if one of my queens went out and I couldn't get one from Baston's or somebody else? What was I going to do? I didn't want to lose the 3 hives that I had at my house, so I thought I'd give it a try, because those cells were either going to make new queens and they'd swarm, or I was going to get my own new queen, and in this case, you know, I've got a new hive and then more honey out of it. I just thought it was a very interesting process to watch it, and trying to be patient, which is not a virtue I have sometimes, so that move them at the appropriate time, because you don't want to go from a 2 to a 10. That's too big a jump. So I found it once a week, going in there to see how they're doing. How many frames have they filled up before? And then I call up Tracy, hey, I need room, because I don't have room at my house for any more hives. Yes, I want to pass on special thanks to Leroy Wignott, who gave me the 2-frame hive. I think he's got a 2-frame nuke. I think he's got uses those himself to do approximately the same thing. But while I was researching this and Pete was looking up stuff, he found a bunch of information that he found very interesting about this process that he wanted to share.
I've always thought, from what we heard, that drones, I thought they only mated once, and because they die right after they mate. But I read online that a drone might mate 7 to 10 times during its mating flight, and that it doesn't always lose its sex organ stuck in the queen. But when they do, the queen has to fly back to the hive, and the workers extract it. And then it read that if the drone does survive its mating flight, it's not allowed back in the hive because it's done its job. It's worthless now. Another thing I came across was the thing about heater bees, that we've seen the empty holes in a frame of cat brood, and the heater bees will crawl in there and raise their temperature and heat up to 7 to 10 pupae around them. And depending on the temperature, they will either be more towards field bees or house bees. Did I lose part of it? Oh, there you go. That pupae that develops at 95 degrees Fahrenheit becomes foragers, and those at 93 become house bees. And this is from a book that was published in 2008. So I just found that an interesting thing. That's all we had on our presentation.
Thank you guys. I appreciate your perspective on doing that. And I think the most important thing for everybody who's listening is the reason David brought this up and Peg and Pete did it is that they had the equipment on hand. Dave put up a list about having nuke boxes available in your stash of stuff.
Oh, I was looking for it up there.
And that's something that was the reason that we used to have, that we have had Nuke Fest in the past, was about teaching you don't have to be a 20-year experienced beekeeper who's been to queen rearing school to make a split, to make a walkway split, or to do what Peg did, which was to take a frame with queen cells and put it in a nuke and see what happens. If you lose it, you lose it. If you don't, you learn by doing and by failing, as David said. So great job on learning that. That's something I did myself. So really encourage everybody, have a nuke box. Everybody needs to have at least one nuke box. And I always say having a nuke box in your stash gives you a safety valve at either end. You either have the hive that's over super duper populated and you need to make some space. You can take some frames out, put in that nuke box as the top end safety valve. The other end, you have what Dave called the dinker hive that's failing or struggling, and you can take resources out of the nuke box and put into the weak hive. So that nuke box or multiple nuke boxes, having them around gives you options to be creative in even making a swarm trap using 2 of them together. So just really encourage you to have those pieces of equipment in your shed so you can utilize them.
Caleb's got a question online. How early typically can I split an overwintered hive?
You can do it late April or early May. Really ideal mating temperatures are 70-degree days where it's sunny. But you got to think about your timing too. When would that queen mate? But I'd say late April or beginning of May. David, you want to add to that?
You're muted, David.
All right, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
I let the bees tell me, like, you keep your eye on when you start seeing those drone cells sealed. You can start thinking about it again if you split too early. Now, if you got a queen, if you went and bought a queen from Baston's or somebody and you got one, you can split whenever it's convenient for you. If it's warm enough for you to get out there and work them, and 57, 58, 60 degrees, you can split in if you've got a queen to go in there. But if you're expecting them to make their own, you've got to let them tell you when to do it. Don't just say, all right, I'm going to do it on April the 15th, because you might do it and they make a queen and there's nobody out there for her to mate with. Watch for them sealed drone cells. And if you want to get real specific, you can pop open some of those drone cells and look for those purple eyes. That's about when that's about lines up just about right when you see purple eyed drone pupa. Let the bees tell you, don't guess. I guess is what I'm saying.
Anything else? Everybody make sure that you have joined our Facebook group, not the Facebook page. Okay, the Facebook group, you have to answer 3 questions that are super simple and request to join, and then we approve you to join. And the only reason we have the silly questions is to avoid bots on Facebook. But we formed the group so that you guys can interact directly without us having to admin your stuff as we did on the page. So join our Facebook group. That's where we'll post when we're going to get into the club hives. That's our easiest way to disperse information to you. So please join our Facebook group.
And if you don't correctly answer the 3 questions, we will deny it.
Yeah, because we got some weird answers. And then we look back at the people and, are they real people? So please don't just answer the questions.
Yeah, you get somebody that has, 1 friend on Facebook and they're from China. They're
Right.
going to be a member of our group.
Right. So please join our group. And again, we have all these meetings are recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel. So happy to provide that for you. And thanks everyone for your attention. Thanks Ross and David. Great information, and Peg, you as well. Really appreciate you guys' time. Hope we see you next month.
Good job, Ross. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All righty.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
I'm going to get some green beer now. I'll see y'all.